Well, hello YouTube, it's me, Fortmaster, and welcome back to another film theory reaction. And, well, this one is, the Smiling Friends commit tax fraud. I mean, knowing what I've seen in Smiling Friends, I mean, realistically, yeah, I could very much see that happening. Or at least being like, actually, you know what? I could very much imagine that after this video comes out, maybe, most likely in the next season, there's like one episode that explicitly like refers to this episode, or they get like either Matt, Pat, or Lee to like actually voice a character in the show. Who knows? I mean, they had the nostalgia critic on, for crying out loud, so I mean, anything's possible. But yeah, I mean, commit tax fraud. I mean, how do they do that? I mean, actually, no way. I mean, they are technically a charity, because, like, nobody pays them to do the good stuff. It's very much people call and then they go out and do it. So, I guess there could be something going on there. Don't know. We're gonna have to see, won't we? So, I guess, yeah, with all that out of the way, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description. If you haven't seen that for some reason, corner video leads to my game theory reaction, and yeah, with all that out of the way, let's get this thing started then, shall we?
Alright guys, things are looking pretty bleak. I'm down $2.4 billion since this new company moved in across the street.
Wait, hold up. Did you hear that? Rewind it and play it again.
I'm down $2.4 billion since this new company moved in across the street.
This right here is proof that the Smiling Friends are committing charity fraud, so let's talk about it.
That one, really?
Hello internets, welcome to Film Theory, the show that knows the true friends are the ones that make you smile. Best way I can help you smile? If you hit that subscribe button. Come on, let's turn that frown upside down, friends. And speaking of smiles and friendship, it's about time we talked about the latest animated comedy taking the world by storm, Smiling Friends.
Dude, if you do that again, I'm gonna punch you. I'm not kidding.
The show was created by and stars Mike Cusack and Zach Hadel, both of whom have their origins as online animators on sites like Newgrounds and YouTube, which, let me say, it's about gosh dang time that big network TV recognized the talent of online creators like this. We just love to see it. Smiling Friends is all about the titular company, Smiling Friends, whose goal is to help people who are feeling down by trying to put a smile on their face. Literally.
There's no time to waste, Charlie. Let's go out there and make people smile! I did not think he was gonna do that. That scared me. That actually scared me a little bit.
It's a great setup that allows for a lot of different adventures
Yeah, that's part of the thing. I mean, I guess if it's not done right, like the whole thing where like, oh, like the characters, speak like 100% real people, like off script, can get a little annoying after a while, but I've found that at least with Smiling Friends, I haven't run into that problem yet.
Ranging from cheering up a princess in an old-school style fantasy adventure to helping a PS2-era video game mascot get his groove back. But as I was watching the show, I noticed something that really set off my theorist alarm bells.
Our story begins on Christmas Eve at a humble little charity called Smiling Friends.
Did you catch that? The Smiling Friends aren't just any company, they're a charity, and that matters because charities aren't ordinary corporations. They have a whole host of extra rules and regulations that they need to follow, which, well, let's just say it's pretty hard for a group in late-night animation to follow all of said rules.
Seeing me get horribly tortured made you smile.
And that can be a big deal. If you break these rules, that can result in the loss of status as a charity, some pretty hefty fines, and even some serious jail time for the leadership. But here's the thing, loyal theorists. The more and more I looked into the Smiling Friends and the laws around charities, the more I realized that not only have the Smiling Friends committed multiple counts of charity fraud, but they had such a massive disregard for the law that they should be shut down completely. That's right, friends. Today we're tackling the scariest subject.
Also, I only just noticed that the building to the right of there said asylum, I think.
Of them all, the IRS and tax law.
Oh God.
And let's just say the biggest surprises are still ahead of us.
Dude, I warned you. I said I was gonna do that if you did that again.
Get ready to grin ear to ear,
You deserved
friends.
it.
Let's dive into it. Now, before we really say whether or not the Smiling Friends are sort of breaking the charity terms of service, so to speak, we should clarify what we mean when we say charity and whether or not the Smiling Friends even count as one. Because in legal terms, that's actually a very specific thing. In the United States, where the Smiling Friends are based, a charity is a non-profit organization that doesn't have to pay taxes because they do work that the Internal Revenue Revenue Service, or IRS, considered exempt purposes. Now, the IRS
Yeah.
can grant this tax-exempt status to a whole host of different groups because they want to encourage people to do good work that for-profit companies never would. Some examples of these groups free from paying taxes? Well, you have religious organizations such as churches, mosques, that sort of thing, but you
Yeah.
also have, quote, organizations that foster national or international amateur sports. That would be stuff like the NCAA here in the United States, which runs college sports. Then there's groups dedicated to the, quote, prevention of cruelty to children or animals, like the ASPCA. You know those commercials with the sad-looking dogs set to
Oh
in the
God,
arms
yeah,
of an
I know
angel?
those.
I'd play a clip here, but, copyright. Additionally, the IRS has a sort of catch-all category for everything else they consider charitable. Basically, this is for everything else that doesn't fall into any of the other categories, with the IRS listing examples as organizations that provide relief of the poor or distressed or the underprivileged, lessening neighborhood tensions, or combating community deterioration.
I mean, just from that short little list, I mean, potentially that's all stuff that could be considered under the purview of the Smiling Friends. So, I mean, at the very least, right now they look like they're doing good. Also, something else I was kind of thinking about. So, this whole thing is hinged off the one scene from, what was the episode? The Frowning Friends, where he says he's down 2.6 billion. And I was thinking, granted, I know I have a very limited knowledge pool to pull from when it comes to, financial matters and, stock and value and stuff like that. But I'd almost think that, given that they are a charity, they're operated by, public donations. That's how they all get paid. So, I mean, the very fact of the matter is that from what we saw from the Founding Friends, they were, very good. They were doing a lot better than the Smiling Friends, and purely because, they were nihilistic. They were taking the easy way out. Like, everything sucks, so why try to make it better? Though who was paying them, I have no idea. So you'd almost imagine that if that worldview was becoming much more pervasive because of the Frowning Friends, that the amount of donations that were coming in would start drying up. So that could mean that just so that the charity or company, whatever you want to call it, is to keep functioning, Mr. Boss was starting to have to funnel his own wealth into the company to keep everything running. So that might be what he was talking about. Though with that being said, that does kind of ask the question, what kind of financial expenses do the Smiling Friends have that would cost him over $2 billion to keep them running for over a week? Okay, yes, I am starting to get onto the side of the whole thing of them committing tax fraud. I think I might be seeing where this is coming from.
And let me tell you, this stuff covers a lot. Everything from organizations like the Critter Connection, who rescue abandoned guinea pigs, the 501st and Rebel Legions, who dress up as Star Wars characters and partner with Lucasfilm and Make-A-Wish for various charitable events.
They're classified as charities? Really? Okay.
To the Zombie Squad, who work in disaster relief while cosplaying that they're saving people from the zombie apocalypse. All fantastic and wacky causes. You love to see it. Though my personal
never heard of them
charity of
before.
choice is Child's Play, who donate toys and video games to children's hospitals around the world. They do great work. Given these rules and how weird and wild real-world charities can be, I would say that the Smiling Friends definitely count. Making people smile is exactly the sort of thing that the IRS would encourage as a mission statement, so no problem there. But that's where the good news for the Smiling Friends would end. See, if the IRS says you're tax exempt, it's not like they can't do a take backsies. It can be revoked if your charity doesn't follow the rules after it's formed.
I think most people watching this who's ever seen, anything involving a megachurch really questions how they're classified as charities or like religious institutions. I swear, I get like a crawling at the pit of my stomach whenever I see those things.
The IRS giveth and the IRS taketh away. Funnily enough, they actually have a handy guide that goes into all sorts of detail here called How to Lose Your 501c3 Tax Exempt Status Without Really Trying. Yes, that is a real government document actually released by the real IRS. Honestly, a lot of these are what you would expect. You have to keep your information up to date, you have to actually follow your charity's mission statement, that sort of thing.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you go through the Smiling Friends series, you'll find that they violated at least 3 of these other guidelines. First of all, once your charity has an IRS-approved mission statement and has been granted tax-exempt status, you can't just go off and do other things with the charity all willy-nilly. You have to stick to what you told the IRS you're going to do. But despite this rule being as clear as day, the Smiling Friends sure do a lot more than just bringing smiles to faces. Probably the biggest example of this is seen in the episode Who Violently Murdered Simon S. Salty, where Pim and Charlie discover that the owner of a local restaurant has been murdered. After doing the logical thing and reporting this to the police, the pair are told that due to budget cuts, the cops don't really investigate murder mysteries anymore and outsource that to another group, the Smiling Friends. Yeah, I don't think you're going to be able to get away with detective work as part of the mission to make people smile. If anything, that's just going to make people cry.
I mean, potentially, it could bring, a smile to the deceased family, knowing that they actually know who committed the murder? Yeah, let's just go with that one. Though again, it's the fact that the police were who did it, who started this. You'd have to also look at them as well.
Regardless, you can't just change the mission of your charity without informing the IRS first. So by blindly going into this murder mystery, the Smiling Friends are risking their tax-exempt status for the sake of profit. However, doing this sort of extracurricular work might be the least of the Smiling Friends' worries, because secondly, the charity can't be used for anyone's private benefit. Remember, charities are supposed to be providing a greater good for society, so the money the charity spends should never be used for the private purposes of any person or company. And there are a couple moments throughout the show that suggest that Mr. Boss from the Smiling Friends isn't exactly keeping things above board here. For example, he has a DDR machine in his office that could very well have been bought using company funds. But that's just a small example, and you could argue that this is a personal item that Mr. Boss brought in just for fun, disconnected from the charity.
I definitely see that.
Elsewhere in the show, we have absolute proof that Mr. Boss does have a direct private financial stake in Smiling Friends. Listen to this.
All right, guys, things are looking pretty bleak. I'm down $2.4 billion since this new company moved in across the street.
First off, how do you lose $2.4 billion in like a day? That's some Twitter levels of just literally burning cash.
Oh god, of course comparing him to Elon Musk. Oh, that's perfect. But yeah, that's exactly what I said. Yeah, and it wasn't a week, it was a day. So, I mean, unless, the land that the office is built on somehow has, the world's largest supply of oil underneath it, or gold, or some other, valuable resource, maybe lithium, I don't know, and they're refusing to move, so it's jacking up land value, yeah, where is all that money going?
But second and more importantly, notice the verbiage that Mr. Boss uses here. Not the company is down $2.4 billion, not the charity is down $2.4 billion. He says I'm down $2.4 billion. He is talking about his personal finances here, connected to the performance of the charity. Having a multi-billion-dollar stake in the outcome of your charity is literally the textbook definition of personal benefit, and thus the Smiling Friends are breaking IRS rules here.
I know this entire time I'm basically playing devil's advocate here, but I'm also thinking. So, you know what I said before about the whole thing of the Frowning Friends spreading nihilism and stuff like that, and then potentially that causing donations and stuff like that for the charity to start drying up. What if instead Mr. Boss was, I guess this could technically be illegal too. What if he's doing the Smiling Friends thing, to help people out, but as a result, he's using the good things that the Smiling Friends are as sort of good PR to help him out in his own personal, investments and stuff like that. I mean, I could very much see him, donating to his own charity, for the tax write-off, But again, if people stop caring or start actively disliking him, that might start affecting the companies that he either owns or he's heavily invested in as well. If he's like a very public figurehead and there's like, oh, this guy that we don't like owns a big stake of this company. Let's start boycotting it or something like that, or because of the whole nihilism thing, let's start stealing everything from them. So they start suffering, and then if you do that en masse, it starts like basically affecting like all of his income. At this point, I'm just throwing stuff at the wall.
But even if we ignore everything else we've talked about thus far, if we take away all the maybes and the what ifs, there's still one thing that the Smiling Friends have done in this show that would absolutely ruin them. See, as non-profit organizations, charities are explicitly banned from doing one specific kind of activity: politics. And hey, I mean, that makes sense. Charities don't pay taxes because of the government, so they shouldn't be using their tax-exempt status to influence the government. And that should apply at all levels of government, be it local, state, federal, or, hey, I don't know, a presidential election. And hey, what do you know, but the Smiling Friends try to influence just that. In the Season 2 episode, Mr. President, the Smiling Friends are hired to help cheer up President Jimbo, the President of the United States, who is sad because everyone seems to hate him in the midst of a vicious election. And it's not very difficult to see why.
Each and every one of you get $1 billion each, so you can all be rich.
Whoa, what are you doing? You can't do that. You'll crash the economy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Everybody's gonna have to give back all that money to the government. All better.
Yeah, surefire way to just rocket up in the polls there, my man. Now, on the face of things, this doesn't have to be an issue for the Smiling Friends. It doesn't necessarily mean...
I'd ask how an idiot like that was elected into presidential office, but I really don't have to now, do I?
They're breaking the rules of their nonprofit. Though the President of the United States is a public servant, perhaps the most public servant, they're also still a private citizen. That means that they can still do all sorts of normal people stuff, like owning private property, having a personal social media account, and yes, even benefiting from a charity. That is totally fine. It's totally above board for everyone involved. The Smiling Friends just cheering up the president is a-okay. However, the problem would come in if they get involved in anything involving an election. See, the IRS explicitly prohibits charities from, quote, participating in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate running for public office. Which is bad news bears for Charlie and Pim, because the way they decide to cheer up President Jimbo, they want to help him get reelected and become his de facto campaign managers. And it's not like they were just like kinda sorta involved.
No, they were the only guys.
Speeches with foreign leaders, preparing Jimbo for his debates. Charlie even accidentally convinces the secret cabal of worms that run the world media to back President Jimbo. You know, I'm just now realizing that if you haven't watched the show, that probably sounds insane.
Yeah, the secret cabal of worms, right, yeah. And the scene right after that where they expel Charlie, and like he's like his sweatshirt's wrapped around him like a straitjacket. It's like, it's the worms! Ah! Oh, I swear. Oh, God. I mean, the episode hurts to watch, but still, there's so many good parts in it.
Come on, everyone knows that it's actually lizards. Either way, by getting so involved with President Jimbo's campaign, the Smiling Friends absolutely break the IRS's rules and should lose their tax-exempt status here. So, yeah, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. By using the charity for personal benefit, changing the company's mission at the drop of a hat, and working for a political campaign, the Smiling Friends have been committing charity fraud, and at the very least should be losing their tax-exempt status. But it could have been much worse than that. See, the government doesn't take too kindly to charity fraud, especially when it comes to large sums of money. The consequences for being found guilty of charity fraud can include fines of up to millions of dollars and up to 30 years in jail depending on who is affected by said fraud. If you want a real-world example, in 1992, the CEO of United Way, a nonprofit network, was forced to resign after he was found to have diverted $1.2 million from the organization to himself and his buddies. He was later found guilty of over 20 felonies and sentenced sentenced to 7 years in jail, while the public perception of United Way was hurt so badly that their donations dried up for years, and the general public lost trust in similar charities. And sadly, the people most directly hurt by this fraud, it's the people doing the everyday work at the charity, like Charlie and Pim. See, despite everything that I laid out here in today's theory, it's clear that Charlie and Pim both have a genuine desire to help people, to make them smile, even if it's in their own way. And just like it would for most charities, losing that tax-exempt status would likely mean the end for the Smiling Friends organization. Many charities like the Smiling Friends just don't have business models that are sustainable as, well, businesses. I mean, you just try walking into a bank and convincing them to give you a loan based on the idea of making people smile. That ain't happening, Chief. As I mentioned at the top of this episode, the reason charities and nonprofits are tax exempt is because the government wants to encourage entrepreneurs to do good in the world, creating organizations that focus on helping people rather than shareholders. Smiling Friends, the show, not the charity, ends basically every episode by showing the actual smile that Pim, Charlie, and the gang put on their client's face. The good they're doing there is being put in danger by their reckless leadership, and that doesn't put a smile on my face, loyal theorists.
No.
Or hey, maybe at the end of this, the boss can just pay his taxes and the Smiling Friends can keep on keeping on. I mean, if he's got billions to lose, he's probably doing okay. But hey, if you really want to put a...
Well, I mean, based on the one episode, he now owns a quarter of hell, so who knows what kind of investment opportunities that's going to bring in. Oh, God. So, yeah, it may turn out that, so it seems that the Smiling Friends may in fact be doing, tax fraud, or charity fraud, I mean. I mean, that's kind of sad, but I mean, given how the show is, again, I don't doubt that if they see this episode, which they probably will, if a season 3 is ever made, most likely, like, an episode about this will actually happen. Who knows? But yeah. God, again, this is the reason I love these theory channels. It's just the absurdity that you can... well, not just the absurdity, the real life consequences you can put into like absurd stories like the Smiling Friends, stuff like that, and have it actually make sense. I mean, again, it's absolutely just beautiful. So yeah, with all that out of the way, of course, as always, original videos linked in the description if you haven't seen it yet for some reason. Corner video will lead to my game theory reaction, and yeah, with all that out of the way, I hope you guys liked. If you did, leave a like, subscribe if you have not, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye!